by this discourse Ali Baba perceived that Cassim and his wife, through his own wife's folly, knew what they had so much reason to conceal. But what was done could not be recalled, and therefore, without showing the least surprise or trouble, he confessed all, told his brother by what chance he had discovered this retreat of the thieves, in what place it was, and offered him part of the treasure to keep the secret. "I expect as much," replied Cassim haughtily, "but I must know exactly where this treasure is, and how I may visit it myself when I choose. Otherwise I will go and inform against you, and then you will not only get no more, but will lose all you have, and I shall have a share for my information." Ali Baba, more out of his natural good temper than frightened by the menaces of his unnatural brother, told him all he desired, and even the very words he was to use to gain admission into the cave. Cassim, who wanted no more of Ali Baba, left him, resolving to be beforehand with him and hoping to get all the treasure for himself. He rose the next morning long before the sun and set out for the forest with 10 mules bearing great chests which he designed to fill. He followed the road which Ali Baba had pointed out to him. He was not long before he reached the rock and found out the place by the tree and other marks which his brother had given him. When he reached the entrance of the cavern, he pronounced the words, "Open, Sesame," and the door immediately opened, and when he was in, it closed upon him. In examining the cave, he was in great admiration to find much more riches than he had apprehended from Ali Baba's account. He was so covetous, so greedy of wealth, that he could have spent the whole day in feasting his eyes with so much treasure if the thought that he came to carry some away had not hindered him. He laid as many bags of gold as he could carry at the door of the cavern, but his thoughts were so full of the great riches he should possess that he could not think of the necessary word to make it open, but instead of sesame said, "Open, barley," and was much amazed to find that the door remained fast shut. He named several sorts of grain, but still the door would not open. Cassim had never expected such an incident, and was so alarmed at the danger he was in, that the more he endeavoured to remember the word sesame, the more his memory was confounded, and he had as much forgotten it as if he had never heard it mentioned. He threw down the bags he had loaded himself with, and walked distractedly up and down the cave, without having the least regard to the riches that were round him. About noon the robbers chanced to visit their cave, and at some distance from it saw Cassim's mules straggling around the rock, with great chests on their back. Alarmed at this novelty, they galloped full speed to the cave. They drove away the mules which Cassim had neglected to fasten, and they strayed through the forest so far that they were soon out of sight. The robbers never gave themselves the trouble to pursue them, being more concerned to know to whom they belonged, and while some of them searched about the rock, the captain and the rest went directly to the door with their naked sabres in their hands, and pronouncing the proper words, it opened. Cassim, who heard the noise of the horses' feet from the middle of the cave, never doubted the arrival of the robbers and his approaching death, but he was resolved to make one effort to escape from them. To this end he rushed to the door, and no sooner heard the word sesame, which he had forgotten, and saw the door open, than he ran out and threw the leader down. But he couldn't escape the other robbers, who with their sabres soon deprived him of his life. The first care of the robbers after this was to examine the cave. They found all the bags which Cassim had brought to the door to be ready to load his mules, and carried them again to their places without missing what Ali Baba had taken away before. Then, holding a council and deliberating upon this occurrence, they guessed that Cassim, when he was in, could not get out, but could not imagine how he had entered. It came into their heads that he might have got down by the top of the cave, but the aperture by which it received light was so high, and the rocks were so inaccessible without, that they gave up this conjecture. That he came in at the door they could not believe, however, unless he had the secret of making it open. In short, none of them could imagine which way he had entered, for they were all persuaded that nobody knew their secret, little imagining that Ali Baba had watched them. It was a matter of the greatest importance to them to secure their riches. They agreed, therefore, to cut Cassim's body into quarters, and to hang 2 on one side and 2 on the other within the door of the cave, to terrify any person who should attempt again to enter. They had no sooner taken this resolution than they put it into execution, and when they had nothing more to detain them, left the place of their hoards well closed. Then they mounted their horses, went to beat the roads again, and to attack the caravans that they might meet. In the meantime, Cassim's wife was very uneasy when night came and her husband was not returned. She ran to Ali Baba in alarm and said, "I believe, brother-in-law, that you know Cassim, your brother, is gone to the forest, and upon what account? It's now night and he's not returned. I'm afraid that some misfortune has happened to him." Ali Baba, who had expected that his brother, after what he said, would go to the forest, had declined going himself that day, for fear of giving him any umbrage, and therefore he told her, without any reflection upon her husband's unhandsome behaviour, that she need not frighten herself, for that certainly Cassim would not think it proper to come into town till the night should be pretty far advanced. Cassim's wife, considering how much it concerned her husband to keep the business secret, was the more easily persuaded to believe her brother-in-law. She went home again and waited patiently till midnight. She repented of her foolish curiosity and cursed her desire of penetrating into the affairs of her brother and sister-in-law. She spent all night weeping, and as soon as it was day, went to them, telling them by her tears the cause of her coming. Ali Baba did not wait for his sister-in-law to desire him to go and see what was become of Cassim, but departed immediately with his 3 asses, begging of her first to moderate her affliction. He went to the forest, and when he came near the rock, having seen neither his brother nor the mules in his way, was seriously alarmed at finding blood spilt near the door, which he took to be an ill omen. But when he pronounced the word and the door had opened, he was struck with horror at the dismal sight of his brother's body. Without adverting to the little fraternal affection his brother had shown him, Ali Baba went into the cave to find something to enshroud his remains, and having loaded one of his asses with them, covered them over with wood. The other 2 asses he loaded with bags of gold, covering them with wood also as before, and then bidding the door shut, he came away. But he was so cautious as to stop some time at the end of the forest, that he might not go into the town before night. When he came home, he drove the 2 asses loaded with gold into his little yard, and left the care of unloading them to his wife, while he led the other to his sister-in-law's house.